Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of the show. Trek Wednesday, stardate 2016.083 at 22:07 Eastern Standard Time. I'm joined tonight by our panelists here, but first off, we'd like to say good well wishes and good tidings to both TimberWolf and Mikey STO. They both had to deal with situations that came up, one logistics and one medical, and not necessarily in that order for their respective talents, ironically. So good luck to both of you gentlemen, and we will see you next week on the show. I am, though, joined by our Chief Intelligence Officer, Captain SarcasmDetector.
Meow.
I see you're very extra happy today.
Oh, there's no timber to howl, so I'll do the cat thing instead.
I see. Our Chief of Cheesy Tactics, especially ones over on Tribble, Captains SOB.
Hello. And I thought there was a different name, Odin.
Yeah, you suck. I'm not allowed to broadcast that on live TV yet. Our Chief Instructor should probably put SOB in detention and then whip him a couple hundred times. TeacherKirby.
Couple hundred, I'm not sure that would be enough. Hey guys, how's it going?
He probably would like it too much.
Probably.
And from a man who's working on a new top secret project to be able to just put a one-up on one-ups. The man who makes audio blasphemy look bad compared to his digital wizardry. Zeph from ZEFilms.
Good evening.
Alright, we're gonna go straight to the point here. I think SOB has something he wants to announce.
Yes. So recently we've seen a bit of a meta change, as in what the high-end DPS is being used. So previously it was anti-proton, and we had a really nice anti-proton torpedo before. Now coalition disruptors are the new thing, and I feel that we need a coalition disruptor torpedo. If that can't be done, at least a normal disruptor torpedo. That's what I think needs to happen.
Really?
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 I can get behind that. Another energy torpedo, a disruptor one.
That
Yeah.
works like the anti-proton.
Exactly like the anti-proton, except disruptor. I
Wait, I just want to... Are you, Odin Knight, against having a new torpedo put into the game?
Well, technically speaking, you already have a torpedo that functions kind of like a disruptor. It's called the Resonant Transphasic Torpedo.
I don't want to talk about that piece of trash, okay?
Well, then you should advocate for its damage coefficient to actually get jacked up a little bit. And then, other than that, its proc rate will work nicely for you. So what you asked for is more or less in the game already. All it needs is just a buff to transphasics, and then it'll actually be very good for you.
Until I have a torpedo that says Disruptor Energy Torpedo Launcher or Coalition Disruptor Energy Torpedo Launcher, I will not be happy. Okay?
Are you ever happy though?
This is a very good question.
Janko had an even better question. Then why not every energy type? To which I say, let's just get rid of kinetics altogether and just call this big ball of energy for this energy type here a torpedo, and SOB will be happy.
That's actually a fantastic idea.
Both of you could go to hell somewhere.
I can get behind that.
I mean, unless Odin Knight wants to... If the Torp God wants to block a new Torp from coming into the game, I think it should happen.
Logistically speaking, and not to put Odin in a more sour mood, I actually don't understand why they don't offer that type of torpedo. Like, why is it just anti-proton? Why hasn't there been one of each flavor introduced into the game? It's unless they plan on releasing it out the same way the same way the anti-proton torpedo was introduced. But that, by that logistics, that would take a while, once a year during an event, and
Well, technically speaking, there are two energy torpedoes that are out there. Can't even call it torpedo, call it energy projectiles, whatever the heck. One is the anti-proton you get from the event, and the other one is the plasmatic one, which is a plasma ball of energy. And that one is available in the Lobby store. They both function at their respective class and types. The one from the Lobby, though, is treated as a heavy on its regular shot, and then it's affected in the same way as the Romulan hyperplasma torpedo is affected, except it's only one for a single shot instead of three. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know why they gimped that torpedo so hard. That plasma one legitimately just sucks.
Well, they could do a couple things there, like, I don't know, fix the heavies to actually fly at a quote-unquote normal speed, whatever that is, but yeah.
Well, I could tell you why it sucks if you want to hear my reasoning.
Go for
It
it.
won't take very long at all. It's because it's a torpedo, and Odin likes torpedoes, so let's make sure it sucks.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, I can find that too.
Both.
I just had an idea. I had an idea
for
here,
it.
guys. So this train of thought is actually a really good idea. I mean, having an energy type for each torpedo of energy weapon, that would be step one. Step two would be to remove torpedo spread and just fold it into fire at will. So you hit fire at will, it fires your beams off, and it also does it also includes a torpedo spread automatically in it. Yeah.
So long as fire at will gets the same treatment as neutronic and quantum phase in spread, I can back that up.
No.
No, why don't you want that? I mean, only your main target is affected by its secondary effects and procs? Don't you want that?
Why would I want that? I want it to be the same effect it has on beams to affect the torpedo. Yeah, that would be nice.
So you want every single target that is affected by your beams to also be affected by the torpedo and all the procs that generate from it. I guess
Maybe.
not. Maybe. Oh well, I don't know. I mean,
Maybe
I'm
not.
just saying.
I don't know.
Well, I'm just
Yeah,
saying. I mean,
so
hell, how about
I'm
how about
just
this?
saying.
How about this though? How about this? How about we only have plasma explosions and chemosite for energy weapons only working off of your main target that you select?
I just want the same overpoweredness that Flaw does to beams to apply to torpedoes,
I would like
to energy
raise a motion.
torpedoes. Go ahead,
I would
Saw.
like to raise a motion. I would like to deport Odinite.
Deport him, suddenly build a
Motion.
wall around him, and make him pay for it.
Yes. He
Jeez,
is not
motion
allowed to-
denied.
He is not allowed to suggest any nerfs to plasma explosions flower beams.
Well, why not? We got it for torpedoes.
Hmm.
Well, because
I don't
torpedoes
know.
suck. They need to be nerfed into the ground.
Well,
They
how about
need to just be removed. Just get it over with.
How about this? We train right into what we did on Tribble yesterday. Now, I initially wanted to go through my entire experience on specking out what I have from HoloDeck over to Tribble, and what an abysmally difficult time it was for my quote-unquote special snowflake build to actually translate almost equally over to Tribble and still lose stuff, but we're saving that for the revamp. So when the new Tribble patch comes out where they're revamping a couple things on there, I already see some things that may be good, but some things that are really bad, especially the battery one that SOB is going to be talking about later. But we'll save that big rant for it. But right now, let's focus on what we actually did in the PvP matches and your immunities, and how you were running strategists or strategists, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and the Torp immunities that you actually had, SOB.
Well, I just want to go over. Right now, the strategist immunity is probably the worst immunity in the game, in the fact that it blocks a single torpedo. Now, the devs have already came up and said that they're looking at increasing it to make sure it would block an entire salvo of torpedoes. I believe that was the exact wording. And that would mean that, so for example, you'd have a 1 second of just kinetic immunity, for example, I imagine, which I feel would be a very balanced approach. It will be hated by some people, but it will certainly help me as I struggle through normal queues.
I just want to, since we're talking about powers and stuff, I just want to comment on something Frank said in the chat, something to downgrade the power tsunami. I know we've mentioned this before, and I've certainly talked about this before. Power creep is mandatory in RPGs, especially MMO RPGs. You need to ramp up player power the more they play. The more hours you put into a game, you need to get more powerful. Otherwise, what's the point of playing? I mean, you're not going to play for hours and hours, especially end game content, if you're just remaining static. You're not improving. So the problem that exists is not that there's too much power. The problem is that there's not enough content to utilize the power. So there's not enough elite queues, and the elite queues that do exist are either broken or reward minimal
Hold on here.
rewards.
Cam, let me rephrase this for you. The elite
Yes.
queues that are not broken are a complete joke. They were challenging when Delta Rising came out. Now remember, guys, Delta Rising was the specialization the expansion that was going to end power creep. Just remember that. That the dev said that. But Elite is a joke now, and we actually need something better than Elite. We need something more challenging. The last really challenging Elite queue was Hive Space Elite, which, though there's not many that can do that, there's probably a dozen or so that have the builds capable of really compressing that down. Hive can be done in just a few minutes.
Well, because Hive was fixed. Remember, there was a patch note maybe like 3 weeks or a month ago, approximately. I think Mikey on one of the previous shows mentioned it was a stealth nerf. It actually wasn't a stealth nerf. They actually mentioned it in the patch notes, but it was a bit obscure. If you remember, a few weeks ago, there was one line in one of the patch notes that said basically something to the effect of certain Borg entities will no longer appear in the queues that they weren't supposed to, or something like that. That was what was happening in Hive Space Elite and a couple of other queues. Basically, there were a couple super cubes. Actually, not a couple. It was a random amount. You'd either get one or you'd get 6. It depends. Super tactical cubes, which had resistances equal to what the crystalline entity has, or what Starbase 234 has, or 264, whatever it's called. So those were really difficult to take down. It would take like 5 minutes or so to take down one cube, whereas the normal elite tactical cube can be knocked out in less than a minute.
Yeah, we were doing some runs the other day, and other than the lag spikes caused by all of the buffs being active, we had one run where everything basically on the left half of the map at the start was gone within just the one fall cycle. It was amazing. We actually had an issue where we were out of position because everything died so fast.
Yeah,
Now-
so that's the problem with HSC. It got fixed. So those those entities that are not supposed to spawn in there were removed, and they did that with several other things. There were some of the Defera grounds had something similar sorry, not the Defera ground. There were some of the ground Borg queues had some super Defera Borgs spawning in, and they were noticeable in the parse. You could see that. And I believe some of the queues like Azure Nebula Advanced had something similar, where they would get super spawns. So, like, imagine a normal 3. You'd get a super 3, and they'd pretty much one-shot you. take you out in an instant and be nearly impossible to take out.
Bit off topic, Cam, but I was doing an Azure run the other day, and I was sitting behind the asteroid, and I couldn't free the stuff in advance. What's going on?
Do you want me to boot him?
Because that is that's a glitch with Azure Nebula. People say that it's intended. No, it's actually a glitch in Azure Nebula Normal. The thing is, with Azure Nebula Normal, it has the tractor beam disable has a wider range, so you can actually be a little bit further out to disable the tractor beam. The advanced version has a much smaller range to activate the tractor beams, or to disable the tractor beams, so it doesn't quite reach behind the asteroid. The thing is you're not supposed to be able to interact if you don't have line of sight. This is where the glitch is. So there's nothing in the game except for Azure Nebula Normal that lets you interact with something if you don't have line of sight with it, or if it's blocked by something, except Azure Nebula Normal. And that is a glitch, and people who use that glitch are exploiters. And don't tell me it's intended or you're not supposed to fight those, whatever. There are different ways to do it. You can kite them off, you can group them off, you can shut them down. My favorite tactic is to throw a Gravwell, a Torp spread, and Canon's spread into them, and that takes out most things in seconds.
What about pushing them away with TBR?
That is also a valid tactic. I personally don't like it because I like killing the stuff. Now, when you tell me that it is not intended to kill them because it doesn't show up in the options, well, in that case, I have to ask you, why do they drop loot? Why do you get experience from killing them if you're not supposed to kill them? Now, there are things in the game, in certain queues, that are there as distractions. You're not supposed to fight them or kill them. They're there to distract you, and those things don't drop loot. They don't give you experience. So Gateway to Grethor is an example of that. You have, like when you start out the first phase, you have a bunch of ships on the right and a bunch of ships on the left starbase, and then you have ships in the asteroid belts. The ships in the asteroid belts, if you go kill them, you don't get any experience from them. They don't drop any loot for you, because they're there as a distraction. Also, during the escort phase, you have all the little ships that try to kill the transports. You don't get any experience for them either. They're there as a distraction. You're not actually supposed to kill them. So that mechanic is in the game, and it applies to several different other queues as well. But going back to Azure Nebula, you do get experience from killing those ships. So don't tell me that you're not supposed to kill them. It's not intended, because you do get a reward for doing so. And just on a final note here, say you get a new ship and you run a Azure Nebula Normal. If you were doing it properly and killing the ships, you could get 2 or 3 masteries. If you run advanced, you can probably get all the way up to 4 masteries on a ship just from running that one queue. And that's a massive amount of experience. So don't tell me you're not supposed to kill the ships, because you're full of shite.
What? I'd never
All
lie.
right, Mr. Donald J. Trump. Yes, anyway. Let's dial this thing back. Let's dial this thing back over here to what we were going off of initially, which was strategists or strategists having this issue with Torp immunities and how they want to extend it from 1 Torp every 60 seconds or 45 seconds if you take the second rank to 1 Torp salvo every 45 seconds that you're immune to. Now, I don't know how else to say this other than, what the hell are you thinking, man? Really? Immunity to Torps on top of other immunities being chained? Really? Really? Why?
Because
Why?
Odin, not everyone has all of the immunities. Like, if you weren't around for the Delta Recruit event, you cannot get improved temporal insight. If you don't have, hundreds of million to spend, you can't go and get invincible. People need these immunities. They can't afford, to travel back in time and or spend hundreds of millions.
But you just touched upon a big point right here. We have all of this power creep in the game where some people are wondering, why doesn't the general population natively just start doing 30k DPS off the get-go, where you could just slap on a bunch of beams, slap on the wrong tac consoles, slap on a bunch of other consoles for your science and engineering slots, and just fall your way through to miraculous 30k or more. Why can't that happen?
Wait, what do you mean, why can't that happen?
It should happen. It does happen.
It does happen. It does happen. It's very simple.
But why is that simplicity not being translated to the general population? Why is it that we have all of this potential power in the game for every single player to utilize? And doesn't matter what the specs are of the PC. They can have the best gaming PC in the universe. They can have whatever is in front of them. Everything's set up the exact same way. One person does it, and then it goes to 5 to 7k max. And then give that exact same configuration to somebody else, and they're getting 80, 90k off of it in the exact same layout. In the exact same layout. What's missing here? What is happening here with the general population that they're missing out on?
Skills.
It can't just be that. It cannot be that. Because there are people who have skill sets. I'm one of them. Timber's one of them. Zeph is one of them. Where we knew next to nothing at all. And we could spam spacebar and get our way up to 12, 13, 15, 20k. Going beyond that, though, took knowledge and skills. So what's missing?
So, what is missing? Well, that's a very good question. I want to bring up the topic of the streamer that we had on our TeamSpeak, and actually, I believe Valakin did hosted him for a while. What was his name? KH Streaming? Do you remember him?
Yes, I do remember him, yes.
So, he was playing the game for all of a week when I ran into him. He was not even at 10k. Not even that. So I went in and gave him some advice. Basically, I set up his keybinds for him. I set him up with a keybind and told him to put max power into his weapons and gave him a couple other tips. And he broke 10k. He got, I think, 10 or 16k in that run. And it was a laggy run for me. It was a pretty bad run on my end, so it wasn't a perfect run. It was a bit messed up. A couple of days later, I believe it was less than a week, he was doing 30k. So it is possible to do it if you put your mind to it and you find the right knowledge. It is available. But the other thing, the other side of this, or the other shoe, is people don't want to. And that's the thing. They want to play in their way. They're not looking for the max DPS, if you will.
Yep, precisely. That's how I am. I am a casual player. You can't be confused about it.
I see Sarcasm's point, and I see it very well. But there are people out there who, and we don't need them to chase DPS. We don't want them to chase DPS. That's not for everybody. Quite frankly, it's fun to do for a little bit of time, and then, okay, I want to go hang out with friends. I want to go meet some new people and hang out with them and play something new. I want to play new content that's going to be challenging to us, and we can coordinate and do some fun stuff together. You know? That have a little bit more immersion into the game as we're playing with each other. That sort of thing. But you don't need to be doing 80 or 90k DPS or GTFO. You know, but do something there where you can contribute to the team and have a good time. But why is it that some of the people who are coming into these things, into these STFs, not able to perform at least to the bare minimum with all of this power creep. And then Cryptic's response right now appears to be add more power creep to solve the issue, add more immunities to stop players from dying so much.
What I enjoy is I've done a lot of pugs over the last few weeks here again. Started getting a bit more active in the queues. I have seen a lot of runs where you get pugs that are doing. You're sometimes lucky to have them one or two doing over 5K. But it's quite common. It's quite sad. I think the lowest I've seen over the last few days was actually someone doing 600 DPS in an ISA. Power creep isn't going to help.
I wonder if some of it might be lack of certain knowledge. Like, I mean, I've run into people that didn't know you could change the skills on your bridge officers. Or you don't know that you can reset your power levels. Things like that. And that, even those simple little things can hold somebody back.
I think the big problem here, I think you mentioned something, Odin, about the devs implementing more power creep to solve the issue or whatever it is. And it's right, so that's part of the issue here is that a lot of the devs. All right, I'll swap this around. Of the devs that can actually perform or get good numbers, quote unquote, and I'm not talking about just DPS numbers. I'm actually just talking about performance that can, aggro or use science abilities or whatever. Just plain out performance. You can count them on one hand. You can count them on maybe the 1 or 2 digits of one hand. The rest of the dev really do not know how to play this game. Yes, they designed the game. They know the ins and outs of the coding of this game, but they do not know how to play the game like we do. They don't know about our meta or the different metas, the different styles, how synergies work. They don't know it. They don't know how the players play the game. So when you see these new ships released, when you unbox a ship and you see it has a beam, a torpedo, a cannon, a dual beam bank, and just a plethora of different weapon styles, the reason for that is some of the devs play like that, literally. And from experience, it doesn't take much knowledge to know that that is probably one of the absolute worst ways to play the game. Because you need so many different abilities just to utilize those different weapon types that you run out of bridge officer slots on your ship. So that is part of the problem. The problem is very, very, very complex, and I don't think we're gonna. Find
a whole other episode.
Maybe like a series of episodes.
Yeah. Now, there's another topic I want to move to. Shortly after the anniversary patch, there were multiple reports of people losing duty officers, some very rare duty officers. Myself, I personally lost my Agent Nerul, the beta healed off from the Delta Operations pack. This was back at the end of January, beginning of February. Most of the people that have had this issue have tried to contact support, but now, even almost 2 months later, most of us still don't have our DOFs back. It's a pain. You can't just go and discard the other DOFs in the pack and reclaim. You are out of luck. You just cannot get that duty officer back. It is a massive pain. I'm just curious, if anyone in the audience has had this issue, have you managed to get it back? Or have you had bad luck like the rest of us?
People are saying that he got deported.
That is disappointing.
That's interesting. Yeah. So if you've had this issue as well, go ahead and leave us a comment. Reply on the actual show's comment section, and we'll get to that. Speaking about feedback, I want to jump into the next topic if you don't mind, guys.
Go for it.
So, last week, remember, we gave you guys a link to post some feedback about how you feel about the show. And there was a number of questions there. And we got a whole bunch of replies since then. And I actually want to go through some of those replies, not all of them, because there were quite a few. But just so we get some feedback here, just to let you guys know, we are reading the feedback. We might not act on any of it or some of it, but we are getting your feedback and we are listening. So, quick summary of some of the responses. About 73.7% of the feedback, or the people that replied, felt that the show was improving or has improved, and only 26.3% feel like it has worsened. And we're going to break this down a little bit. Some of the comments from the people that feel the show has improved, the variety of talent on the panel and the different views, and this gets repeated quite a bit, and I'm really glad you guys noticed. I was worried that that might have kind of been too subtle. I mean, that was our intent all along. I wasn't sure if it got through or not, but I'm glad that people have actually noticed this.
Sarcasm detected.
Interaction among the hosts feels more cohesive, thank you, and the groove is found. There's still much room for improvement with issues of people talking over each other all at times. Yes, that is a problem, and we are discussing it over and over again. So hopefully, eventually, that will get fixed. I mean, we do try to not talk over each other, but there are technical issues with that as well. We're not sitting in the same room, for example. So even if you have a bunch of people sitting in the same room with each other, you're going to get instances where people talk over each other. We're spread out across the continent, and there's lag is a determination, or I should say latency. Some people have more latency than others. Some people have like a 4-second delay. So, yeah, and then there's also the personality issues as well. So, part of the package of having a variety of talent and different opinions and different people from that have different views, you can also get different personalities and different characters. So, yeah, you kind of have to take the good with the bad on this one. Hearing more than one opinion on the matter, not to mention even if it clashes with some people about how they feel about the subject. Yeah, we generally don't hold back, and we all say our opinions, going back to the different characters, different personalities. So that is certainly visible. Comment here, more guest hosts and more on how Star Trek has improved the world by making people think about science, engineering fields to make what they saw in Star Trek TV and movies. How to improve STO, not just to bitch about it. So I'm just reading these off as they were written. Any grammar or spelling mistakes, nothing to do with me. I'm just reading the stuff out here. You got to excuse that, but hopefully the point is getting across. Some further points from those who think the show has worsened. TimberWolf's howls have become increasingly painful over the last few episodes. You know what? They've been painful from the very beginning. Thank you very much. I still have ringing in my ears. Here's a little bit of a long one. Some of the long ones I've cut short, but I want to read this one out because I find it pretty well written. Too much complaining. I used to really enjoy the show, but lately it feels anti-STO. I'm hoping this isn't coming across as mean or anything. I understand the need for criticism, but it's rapidly going downhill. I thought the show was set up to unite the community, but it comes across as bitching and promotion of YouTube channels. I'll get to the YouTube channels in a minute. I understand that there is only so much you can discuss each week, but it used to be very informative and enjoyable. Now I sit and listen. All I can think is, why are these people playing this game if they don't like it so much? I do understand the no punches pulled nature of the show, but if you seriously want to get devs to come on, stop trying to be hardline reporters so much and meet them in the middle ground. Making sarcastic comments about having tried to contact them but got no answers isn't going to help, hoping that they didn't come across as nasty as it wasn't meant to be. P.S. Please tell Odin ground mini torps are awesome. He's not using them right. Yeah, Odin, get some skills, bro. They're best used as mob knockback and worked into ground keybind, tied into primary attack if possible. If they're on the floor, they're not firing back. It's more about knockback than DPS. So I just want to cut this up a little bit. The show isn't completely about criticism. I'm sorry if that's all you're getting from the show or that's all you're perceiving, but we pride ourselves on one thing, is that we call it as we see it. So if something good is done, we will laud it. We will praise it to the high heavens. If there's something bad happening, then we will criticize it. So there are shows, there have been episodes where we've been very much everything is awesome because good things have been happening. We saw some good things in the game, and we commented in such a fashion. Other times there were bad things, and we criticized it. And quite often, you'd get both of those in the same episode. So I feel it's a bit unfair to say that we are being anti-STO. If anything, if we are extremely frustrated, like in my case, I will go cool off and do something else, like play another game, for example, if I feel really frustrated about STO. And let's face it, compared to some of the stuff you see, for example, on the forums, it's not so bad now, but it used to be very toxic, very vitriolic. Even on the subreddit, you can see some vitriol there. The show isn't bad. And then again, the final point on this is, yes, we criticize, but we don't go about it in a destructive manner. So we won't go out and say, well, this sucks. We'll say this sucks because so and so and so. We'll actually discuss it and compare and have different opinions on the matter. So I think you're being a little bit unfair here, but we do appreciate you giving us this feedback. It does give us something to think about. Just to continue on about the dev interviews. Here's the thing. We have tried to meet them in the middle, and we did that for months on end. So the issue isn't that we're hard-hitting or we're hardline reporters. The issue is that we had a guest on the show about 9 months ago. Was it 9 months ago?
At least 6 months.
July
It's,
last year.
Oh, wow.
So it's
9 months.
Yeah, it's been almost a year. So that guest, who's only appeared on the show once, made a comment that the devs found offensive. Some of the devs found offensive. And since that point, they have snubbed us. We've tried to meet them in the middle. We've tried to be nicer, but we've been snubbed. So when we're joking about having, asking the devs but not getting a comment, you know what? We really don't care if we get a dev on the show anymore. Really, we don't. We gave up on that months ago. We're just having a little bit of fun at their expense because we find their thin skin actually quite amusing. So in that regards, we make sarcastic comments here and there. And it's just how we deal with the show. We were always making jabs at both the devs and at each other. And just to go on a little bit more, you know what? I'm friends with some of the devs, not like friends, but I have them on my friends list. I chat with them occasionally, and some of them might actually be devs that I've had or have butted heads with on the forums or on Reddit or other places. And some people got upset at me and offended at me for the way I talk to these devs for certain posts. The thing is, we still talk to we still comment to each other and make we're still good about it, because seriously, uh, these devs are not going to get too offended by snide comments or sarcastic comments. Oh, anyways, enough of this topic. I want to keep going. Next point. Panel has consistently been full of top-end STO players talking about mostly top-end topics. Panel should better reflect the various communities in STO. Here's the thing. Let's go back to what we were talking about previously, some of the improvements on the show, the variety of talent on the panel, and the different viewpoints. So it just goes to show that people see things differently. They'll look at the same thing and they'll see different things. Yes, we have different members on the panel that reflect different areas of the community. We'd like to have more people on for different areas. For example, we had Vel, who was our engineer. He was a tank. He was the math guy. He unfortunately is studying right now, so he's no longer in the show. Snipey was our PvP person. He was also studying. He has real life interfered with his issues. We have Mikey. He has some issues right now. He's our healer. Zeph here is our role-playing person. There are others. We'd like to, get more people on. For example, maybe some PvPers or some ground people onto the show. But it's not quite that easy. You can't just pick someone at random and throw them in here, because it might actually disturb the chemistry. It might cause problems. It might work out great, but it is something that we have discussed and are looking into. Just saying, it's not quite that easy. It's going to go on to the next question here. We asked, how long should the show be? And here, this is pretty interesting. 47.4% of the responses believe the show should be between 45 minutes and 60 minutes. 36.8% believe it should be 60 to 90 minutes. I guess we're more along the 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hour range. Hopefully we're going to make strides into shortening it in the future. Fingers crossed it will work, but sometimes there's quite a lot to talk about, and we tend to talk a lot. I don't know if you've noticed or not.
No,
we never get off
way.
topic.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No.
Next question was, what topics do you feel require more attention? Point. It would be nice to actually have the show devote some time to engineering builds for the game. And this, I don't quite understand this. This was a longer piece, but just pointing that one sentence here. What do you mean engineering build? As in an engineering cruiser or an engineering captain? Because this gets really, really complex here. Builds for engineers and cruisers?
I think if I can speculate, I think maybe going back to one of the other points where somebody was talking about, we talked mostly about like top end and how the new mechanics coming into the game is going to affect DPS. Maybe they want us to maybe take a look at the mechanics that are coming into the game and how it'll affect other builds like engineering builds or science builds, that kind of thing. Because I will kind of agree that we talk more about DPS than engineering or science. Not to say that we don't talk about it, but I think maybe when we look at the mechanics, we also take a look at how it affects the other aspects of the game. That's my speculation on that one, though.
when I think of an engineering build, I think of typically it's one of two things. Someone's doing a tank, which tanking in this game is basically going to be a DPS build. The exception being you're going to be using plus threat and you're going to be focusing a lot more on pull heals and stuff. And then I see the other type as a healer. Healers used to be quite common in PvP, but with the current game state, everyone heals. So I don't know what they're talking about.
Good point. We'll actually take that into consideration. That's actually a very, very good point.
And we do have somebody on the show that does know a buttload about engineering. Mikey, he's really good at that stuff. Just unfortunately, life isn't too kind to him sometimes.
Indeed. Like, I do like to talk about science abilities as well. That's one of my favorite playstyles, actually, a tactical captain in a science ship. And before you start, moaning, oh, tactical captain and science ship should be science captain, let me tell you, there are different synergies in the game. So tactical captains work really well in cruisers and science ships. Science captains work really well in escorts and cruisers. Engineers work really well in escorts and science ships. It's about synergies, and realistically, your captain career is just a flavor. Your actual class is your ship. But let's avoid that topic because it gets really long in that regards. So I like to play science ships, and I do like to talk about science and how these abilities work. And to be fair, remember, I took 2 weeks off because I got really mad at how the skill revamp dealt with science abilities and how it pretty much nerfed some big ones. I basically flipped the table and rage quit. So in that effect, yes, we try to talk about different topics, and I'm sure we can probably get more opinions in that regard. So yes, thank you in that regards. Next point, though, shipbuilding tutorials and piloting tutorials. Now, this is where it gets complicated. Someone mentioned that we tend to point out our YouTube channels, and that's what they're there for. The different YouTube channels that we have and other people have are where you get the tutorials, the building tutorials, the piloting tutorials, like Valican FX, his stream, for example, giving him a plug. He does a lot of builds for a lot of people. Every time he does a show, when his streams are pretty long, he'll make, for every show, he's making like 6 builds or more and giving people advice. So that's why we point out the different YouTube channels. It's not just to self-promote. That is a part of it. Of course, we're going to be self-promoting ourselves. Why the hell not? But all that extra information that we can't squeeze into the show, that's what why we have these other things going.
Yeah, just to build off of that, Cam. That's primarily what you and Timber more or less do with whenever a new ship gets out and you can afford it or able to get your hands on it. You're able to go into a very in-depth look at the ships, both visually and functionally, with your own critique of how it performs and all that. And that in itself, those kind of things you don't want to rush, especially a building or building or piloting stuff. For us to cover all the major points like patch notes and whatever else going down the line, it's just that's why Cam and Timber do those kind of videos, to educate you guys and give you the most information they can without having to be rushed in like a hour or hour and a half segment that we do here while we have so much other stuff to talk about.
Yeah, pretty much. Next point is other things in STO beside DPS, like what consoles to use beside TAC and DPS console. I think we've already discussed that, but yeah, we're working on that. Topics that need less attention. SOB. The runs about bugs.
Wait. SOB.
role playing, PvP. We need to talk less about PvP, guys.
We barely talk about PvP as it is. If anything, we want more PvP talk about it. Ground and space.
I think half these suggestions were probably jokes or something along those lines. Let's talk about the devs not appearing on the show. No, we're taking that joke and we're running with it as far as we can. And there were about 3 or so comments about non-STO related content. And we'll get to that in a second. So the next question was, do non-STO related sections interest you? And 42.1% said yes, and 42.1% said no. So it is split evenly. So in that regards, carry on. So there were a lot more comments. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to them, but I've actually used quite a bit of time on this section of the show, and I have to pass it on to the others here. So thank you for the feedback. I think we'll keep the feedback thing up, and we'll add the link to the show notes. So go ahead and add, if you haven't done so already, visit that page and give us your feedback. And if you're lucky, we might actually read it online, anonymously, of course.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much. And we'll definitely be having our discussions in the show notes and the discussions, whether it's on Reddit, on the ARC forums, or in our YouTube channel. Feel free to discuss anything and everything that's been on here.
Quickly, before I disappear here, I want to skip down to the Tribble patch notes. There's one specific thing I want to discuss quickly. They shuffled around a lot of things in today's patch, but most notably, they moved threat control, the unlock, down to Engineering 5. So now you're forced to either choose the plus or minus 100% threat gen or battery expertise. This is a massive, massive pain for tanks, and it just is really, really bad. What do you guys think about that?
Don't get me started.
I don't like the change. I don't like the change because, it means that I have to either choose to have the ability to increase or reduce my threat, or have batteries actually be something usable. And I don't think that that's, I think that's going to end up causing problems.
It's already hard enough. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say something to test out and for us to report back next week, I think.
I remember a comment that was made, I'm not going to say by whom, just somebody who said that you'd be able to translate your build from HoloDeck over to Tribble using this new modified skill tree with little to no loss. We've already seen for builds that are not quote-unquote on meta already having some issues to various degrees, some worse off than others. Okay, I guess that's the price for not being cookie cutter. This, though, really, really shuffles things around to the point where you literally will have to specialize one way or the other and lose out on what made running your ship and your build fun. I've actually found it more frustrating on the this current build right before this patch came out, to actually try and set that up than I did on HoloDeck when I did a respec. Which, alright, we're going to give this one a shot. We're going to see how it goes and we'll provide our feedback. And I would recommend for everybody here, right now, if you're listening to the show or you will hear from somebody else, pass the word on right now. We cannot ignore our chance to actually leave constructive feedback, whether it be positive or negative, on these type of changes. Because this is going to be the game we're going to play. And if you're going to get frustrated and you're going to complain about it, and you haven't went in and tested and provide a legitimate reason why it should or should not be so, then you have no reason to complain. So step up to the plate. I sucked it up and downloaded Tribble and got on there and started testing it out. Even though it shouldn't be testing, it should be just enjoying myself after a hard day's work. Do it, because I don't want to have to complain later on and be a hypocrite and say, well, did you try it out and leave your feedback? No, I didn't. I just want to complain. So there are some good things in this change that will help all manner of builds. But there's some things that will cripple more of the different builds out there than others. Leave your feedback. Leave it detailed. If you need help, one of us will be able to help you when we have some free time together.
Yeah, I was going to say, I finally jumped on to Tribble to test out the skill revamp, and I found my ship to actually be a lot more maneuverable, and everything for me personally. Now, I in the review, it's like the show is full of top end. I don't consider myself a top end kind of guy. I am more mid-range. Like, I can hit when I need to, but I consider myself a mid-range kind of guy. But my specs pretty much stayed the same. And the one thing of note, Odin, you remember this, when I compared my critical chance and critical severity between Tribble and HoloDeck, it was the exact same, right down to the decimal. So from what I've been reading on the forums and on Reddit and listening to with other folks in TeamSpeak, I think the skill revamp for the really unique builds is it could possibly really throw a wrench into things. Whereas if you're just doing kind of like the generic thing, like I'm going to call myself generic for all intents and purposes. But if you're just playing the game generically, you can make your way through, like you can pull your weight in ISA and you have fun or whatever. I think the skill revamp will be pretty self-explanatory, and I don't think you guys will see too much of a change. I didn't, but it's still in testing. Things could still get changed, and yeah, that's all I have to say about the skill revamp so far, of my opinion.
And you see, this type of feedback is good, and we need to be able to provide this feedback to something where the people who are actually working on the skill system can see this. He has a good feedback for it with a positive response. Okay, good. What does he have here? Well, leave your detailed tree down and show it off to everybody else, which we're actually going to provide a link to in the show notes on how you can start practicing on specking out your tree for the new system. Now, granted, yes, there's some shuffling around, so that one is not up to date yet, but I'm assuming that it will be updated once the patch hits and the person who coded this gets to work on it. So you can still use this as more or less as a rough draft to design your spec for the new skill system. So we'll include it in the show notes here.
One other thing that I liked from the Tribble notes, I don't think we have it in the show notes here, but in order to purchase what's called the master trait, is that what it's called after 25?
The ultimate.
The ultimate, thank you.
The ultimate. Yeah.
Before, you needed 25 points in a specific area 25 points in a specific area. So if you're going TAC, you needed to spend 25 points in that area. And keep in mind, I just started using this thing, a couple of days ago. So 25 points. They've lowered that requirement down now to 24, which is interesting because when I did my thing, like I put points into my EPS, some hull, some shield, regen, and mostly TAC, because it was a TAC captain that I copied over. And I ended up I only spent 24 points in the TAC thing. I'm like, oh, well, crap. But I think that reduction to 24, it might actually be a little bit beneficial. It might allow people to kind of, if they're the escort and they want to spend that one extra point in survivability, they'll be able to, from a general player's point of view, of course.
I don't have a lot to comment here because I haven't actually tested out the latest patch. I've looked over the patch notes, and there's one thing I noticed, and this is to touch upon something that Odin just said. Whereas if you leave constructive feedback, they will listen. And a while back, when this thing was first implemented, I gave some feedback, and basically my opinion was that the science and engineering traits, or the skill tree for those two, were at the lower end, at the low levels, were basically stacked with the defensive abilities. So you had, on the first tier, you had two defensive abilities. On the second tier, you have two defensive abilities, and you don't get the utilities till you get to the third and fourth tier, so on. My feedback was to mix it up a little bit so that you get the utilities a little bit earlier and the defensive ones are spread out a little bit across the tiers. And this has been not quite implemented as I had suggested it, but it was implemented, and that this is actually a very, very nice change, and this should actually make it easier for people as they're leveling up. For new players, for established players, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. But it's there, and it's something, and they listen to what I said in that regards. So yes, the devs do listen to constructive criticism or suggestions.
We're still going to be monitoring this as far as the changes and performance. Scotty has a video of some of us on Tribble doing some performance tests, fun PvP, and I think he may have also gotten a couple of the PvE runs we did as well. But we'll stay tuned to each of our channels, as well as a couple other channels we're going to link in here as well, and you'll get some of the notes and happenings on Tribble. And if you're going on Tribble, drop a note anywhere, either on a YouTube video or anywhere on the forums, and just say, hey, I'm hopping on, what time you guys want to go. We have a couple of fleets, so they're probably going to go over there. I'm sure I can convince 602 to go. I'm sure IQ Fleet would like to go as well. I know Latinum Fleet will be over there in pieces here and there. The DPS After Dark crew will definitely be over there, so Teacher, I'm sure you'll whip everybody into shape heading out there, right?
Yeah, I was over there a little earlier today, right up until they took it down for the patch. I did attempt to start patching it and realized it was 4 gigs, and I do not have that much data. Today's my last day of my billing cycle. I have like 1.5 gigs left when I got on. So yeah, so I have to wait until after midnight when I have my free data zone to go and download the patch. So barring them doing any more patches, after that, I will be on Tribble tomorrow. So.
All right. Moving along with you here, why not we actually go straight over into... Oh, I don't know what you want to say here. Teacher's Corner! Everybody pay attention. Class is in session.
All right. So this week I kind of did a simple keybinds. It's kind of like a introduction kind of thing. Just some real basics. I show off the FES keybind application for STO. It's pretty easy to use. I go through exactly how to use it, set it up. I do touch on the kinds of things you're looking for to put into your keybind. I do warn, never put distribute shields on there, ever. I don't care how much you think it's going to help you. Don't do it. And just give an example, and I go through and show you exactly how to do it and how to put it into the chat window, and encourage you to experiment a bit. And the thing with the FES application, it lets you tie one tray so you can change out abilities. So if you find that what you've done doesn't work, you can go and change it without having to actually go back and redo your whole, bind file and link it into chat and open up the separate application. Once you get it in there, you can simply change out the skills that are in there once you need to. So it's pretty simple. So check it out. Any comments?
I haven't seen the video yet, but I probably would like to, just in case it's something that I've missed when I do my bind. So oh heck, probably this.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. Why don't you take us in through This Week in Trek?
So this week in Trek, we got a couple good hits here. March 21st, in the year 2153, Captain Archer is briefly taken prisoner by the Tellarite bounty hunter, and I'm probably going to butcher this, Skalar, who plans to sell him to the Klingons later. And this was in the Enterprise episode Bounty. Also on March 22nd, in the year 2233, James T. Kirk was born in Iowa on Earth. This has been referenced in numerous episodes and movies. And on March 22nd, in 2285, Project Genesis enters its third stage. The USS Reliance dispatched to the SETI Alpha system to determine the viability of SETI Alpha 4. Basically, the events of Wrath of Khan, where they find Khan and his gang there, and they hijack the Reliant. And let me see. Oh, yes. And we have some birthdays, some real life birthdays. William Shatner was born on March 22nd, 1931. John Delancey, March 20th, 1948. And Leonard Nimoy, March 26th, 1931. So happy birthday to all of them.
Also, happy birthday to Connor Trinier, also known as Tucker from Enterprise. I believe his birthday was on Saturday.
I missed that one. Oh, okay. It wasn't within the week span. Sorry about that.
Oh, we'll take care of that. We'll celebrate him next week.
I have an autograph photo of him from him above my monitor right now.
Lucky dog.
Nice.
I know.
You know what I've noticed in all of this research is that a lot of times they use the actual real life birthdays of the actors as the birthdays of the characters that they play. It's kind of interesting.
Any closing thoughts, ladies and gentlemen?
Real quick, holodeck maintenance for tomorrow. They're going to be bringing down servers for 4 hours from 6 a.m. PST, so 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and then add 4 hours. They're going to be doing a standard server restart as well as account server maintenance, so there's no patch notes for that. And I'm surprised that we didn't touch on this, but announcement date for season 11.5, April 12th, with a new little teaser trailer, and then a confusing May 5th, 2016. I actually really wanted to hear what your guys' speculation was on that 5516.
Some new temporal event similar to the Delta event. That's my guess.
I thought it was going to be something like Trek related, so I started looking around for like anything Star Trek and May 5th. And the only thing that I could find is the Enterprise episode E2, where it's during the Xindi arc, and they come across the second Enterprise. They go through a portal and they're thrown back like 117 years, or thrown forward 117 years into the future. And that's where you find the other Enterprise that's been like retrofitted like mad. That's the only thing that I could find that references May 5th. But it's kind of funny how that episode coincides with what the theme of 11.5 is, which is temporal stuff, pretty much. So
The temporal Cold War, yeah.
yeah. So I don't think it's that. I also thought it was kind of interesting that they used the old Connie in that one little shot. So yeah.
You know, you could be onto something here. You could very well be onto something. Well, we'll make a note of this.
Here. I hope I'm right, but I don't know. It could just be a big coincidence.
I don't believe in coincidences. But you know what? With the 11.5 trailer out there, you have something cooking up, you know? Because you know how we like to cross-promote each other and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to be doing an 11.5 trailer. I am in the process of trying to find music, something not too long, but long enough that'll allow me to work with the limited assets that I have, because obviously in their trailer, And keep in mind, these trailers that are released for Star Trek Online are actually done by Perfect World Entertainment, their marketing department. This is not done by Cryptic or the developers there. So they obviously have access to a lot more stuff than I would have, like that big ass ship. I don't know what the hell that was, and then the fleet upon fleet of. Oh my God! What's the name of the species? I'm blanking. The Nakul.
Isn't it cool? Something like that. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to get creative here. So it's yeah. There, if you smell burning, that's my brain, and yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to it, man. And if you need some help, yell. I'm sure the community will be more than happy to help out.
Oh, I'm sure.
Speaking of which, Al, I am actually thinking of doing a new series of videos, and I might actually need your assistance with it, or maybe just collaborations. I'm still kind of mulling it over in my head, but just possibly some Foundry playthroughs. It wouldn't be long. I wouldn't be playing any of the really long episodes. I do it episodic, maybe 15, 20 minutes long, maximum half an hour. But maybe just getting a couple of people and doing a playthrough
Yeah, I'll come
and
play with
recording
you.
them.
I'll come play. Just as long as you
Alan.
don't like scratch my face off if I try scratching your tummy.
Well, you're only allowed 3 rubs, no less, no more.
Okay, and on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning into the show. We'll see you out there, somewhere in game, or on Tribble, or wherever the hell you may be. We'll enjoy having you around. Good night, folks.
Good night.
Good night, folks.